on the phone or through satellite, but today we have Muhammad Massaquoi in the studio, the former UGA and NFL wide receiver, and certainly we all know who you are, and we've seen you play. I didn't realize you were your mom still lives in the area, probably a couple of blocks away from where we are, and this is where you grew up, and you played ball with Chris Leak, who was the #1 player in the country coming out of high school, if I remember.
He was. He helped me get recruited, so I'm a big Chris Leak fan.
So how did that happen?
So I'll tell you a funny story. He had Bobby Bowden come down his senior year, my sophomore year, and I literally had the worst practice of all time because I thought Bobby was recruiting me. And my coach pulled me to the side and said, "Listen, he's here for Chris. Don't worry about it." So he ultimately went to Florida, Georgia's enemy, but, it turned out good for him.
And so ultimately you made it to Georgia, and you had quite a career there.
There's no place like playing between the hedges. And funny story, actually, my other quarterback, Joe Cox, we went down there for a tryout camp. He ends up getting a scholarship, committing the next day, and he became the guy that recruited me to go to Georgia.
So were you the reason that Stafford went #1, or was he the reason you ended up getting drafted?
No, I've benefited from great quarterbacks. So Stafford is a guy who immediately, as soon as he came in, you saw the arm talent. He's extremely smart, a guy that is a fun guy to play with, big time personality. I actually just saw him this weekend at a wedding. And when you have that many people come to your pro day, that many people watching your quarterback, you make sure that you show up. And
it's interesting because you had a huge year in 2008, and that's a year that I believe, you correct me if I'm wrong, Georgia started #1 in the country. Alabama came to town, and I remember being in that stadium that night. I don't remember anything quite like it until the game started.
So that was the second time that we came out with the blackout jerseys. And the first time we came out with the blackout jerseys, we rolled Auburn. It didn't work out that way for us. I think that we thought just because we came into the year #1 that year that it was going to be a pushover. We could roll over Alabama. But I want to say that's the year that they won the national championship.
Yeah, actually they won. That was they ended up winning it the next year.
Yeah.
But Muhammad, that was the game that I think Alabama had beaten Clemson in the opener, and no one expected it. And all of a sudden, the blackout game stamped Alabama as legit.
They stamped it. I want to say they may have been up 28-0 at one point.
Yeah, it was either 28 or 31, and then Georgia made a comeback toward the end of the game.
Little
it was close.
Late. Yeah,
but it was a significant game, and really after that, Mark Richt had that one more shot in 2012, and I'm really interested because so many people today are seeing the attention Georgia's getting. There'll be a top 4 team. There'll be a pick to go to Atlanta. But there are some old dogs who just go, man, we've seen this movie before. What happened under Rick that stopped that team from finishing the job?
I think, one, we weren't as deep. If you look at what Georgia's doing right now in recruiting, you may have had a splash recruit every class with Coach Rick. Right now, the whole class is decorated 4 or 5-star. And when you have a guy leave, a Stafford leave, a No-Shawn leave, it's really hard to replace that. But now you have James Cook, you have the Zamir White kid, so that when Michelle and Sony or Michelle and Chubb leave, you have these guys that come in. Right now we have the quarterback competition, a legit quarterback competition.
Do you think it is legit?
I think Fromm wins the job.
Yeah.
Just because I like his intangibles, what he did last year. I don't think that was flukish. I think he's the real deal. But when you have to replace talent like that and you can't replenish it, right, it's almost impossible to make that run year after year.
So you have a great time at Georgia. Listen, a couple of games go haywire, but so then you go to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had a great high school career, a great college career, and in the NFL, you're with 3 different clubs. Take us through your NFL career.
So that was get drafted by the storied franchise, the Browns, who they have a great fan base, and for whatever reason, we just could not get it together. And during that
Don't
time,
worry, they haven't gotten any better since you left.
I think this year they do, though. I think they've made a lot of good decisions in bringing Tyrod Taylor in and shoring up the quarterback position, something that didn't happen when I was there. But it was one of those things, I think, that after I got the big concussion that my performance started to tail down a little bit. And I wish him the best of luck now. I'm still a big Browns fan. I'm a huge Josh Gordon fan. Chubb's up there, so hopefully he can turn that thing around.
You think Baker was the right choice?
I don't. Honestly,
You got a little bit of company here.
I would have liked to see him either get one of the big arm quarterbacks. In that league, you see a guy like Joe Flacco, you see Ben Roethlisberger, the big arm prototypical guys. It's not easy to play up there just because you're right off of the lake. The wind is swirling, and you're going to take a lot of beating just because you're playing against those defenses up there. And
how tough was it to play there in that weather?
It was tough.
You played everywhere, obviously. But,
yeah, it was tough. The lake effect, as they call it, is not something that you can prepare for. Phil Dawson one time, he literally, who was our kicker up there, he was aiming for the pylon on the right sideline, and you see the ball just fish hook back in. And when you have a ball that's moving like that, you have playing in negative degree weather, it's hard to get anything done.
So you move on from Cleveland. You played with the Jets, and
at that time,
the Jags
and the Jets.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think my body was trying to give it all it could, but I didn't have enough in the tank to make it last all the way through.
What was New York like in the time you were there?
New York was interesting, just because you're there, you're in a big market. Rex Ryan's up there, who is actually a really smart guy. Some of the theatrics that happen around him takes away from the football genius that he's in. But once again, you have a situation where if you don't have a quarterback, there's not much that you can do, and they've been through their quarterback carousel as well. So if you look at the teams that win, they have a quarterback. The other pieces you can kind of plug and play, but without a quarterback, you can't do anything.
You know, Mohamed, you have a fascinating story, and it becomes even more fascinating because I know a lot of former NFL players, and they try to do this or something else. When it ended, what was it like, and what were you prepared to do?
Well, you never know when it's going to end.
Right.
I was a second-round pick, so I had this thought in my head that I was going to play 10 years. I was going to get to X, and 10 years actually would be this season. So in not seeing that through, for me, I took a little time to just figure out what I wanted to do. Ultimately landed at Morgan Stanley just because a lot of athletes go broke. I wanted to make sure that didn't happen to me. A lot of athletes had questions, so I thought, hey, this would be a good field to, one, protect myself and protect a lot of guys that I played with.
So it was going pretty well.
Pretty well.
You saved some money. You're having a good life, and then it took an unbelievably strange turn. What happened?
So last spring, out riding ATVs, which I highly would discourage anybody from doing at this point in life, and just something that was routine coming around a corner. My ATV had lost control, and I ended up flipping and rolling, and at the time I didn't think it was a big deal. I'm looking at my hand, and it's all mangled, and I'm thinking, I'll get a couple stitches, get a couple pins put in, it'll be all right. And I get helicoptered to the hospital, and my doctor looks at me with a straight face and says, hey, we have to amputate your hand. And you're looking like, I didn't prepare for this. And
I know it's a cliche question to ask what was going through your mind other than just shock and terror, but how did you digest that?
It didn't become real till probably some months after.
Really?
Where, as weird as it is, you'd have dreams of still having your hands, and all my memories up until that point, rightly so, were with two hands. And then you look down one day and you're like, what is really going on?
Right.
And even I'll catch myself looking at my hand now and just be like, damn.
In terms of the medical part, what happened? I mean, how did they deal with it?
So first of all, I had great doctors. My doctor was actually a UGA guy. I'm thankful that he was UGA and not Georgia Tech or Florida or anything.
They would have
like
done
that.
well, I promise you.
Nah, something else probably would have happened to me. But they look at it and they say, okay, this is what we can do. We're going to try to save most of it, but it doesn't look good. And because they were so skilled, they were able to save my thumb, which is the most important finger because it gives you some type of opposition to push against. And over the stages of 12 surgeries, little by little, things came up. A lot of those, think of them as scopes, where you're going out and cleaning everything out, because skin's off. I had skin grafts, different things like that.
I mean, you had great hands, you're a receiver. In terms of, I mean, you're alive, but in dealing with just the vagaries of life, how challenging is it?
You have to relearn a lot of things. Tying my shoe, getting dressed, driving, eating, cutting, holding a knife, different things like that. And it was a big challenge to start with. And a lot of things I had to humble myself and ask for help on, whether it be my wife or friend or a random stranger to say, hey, can you help me do this? And now, because of this device, I've gotten a lot of that function back. But there's still things where for the rest of my life, I have to make sure that I'll lean on somebody for help.
Yeah, I hurt my whatever finger this is last year, and I put a splint on it. I couldn't button my buttons, and that was just because somebody had literally broken my hand shaking hands with me. I mean, I cannot imagine. I mean, it was a major disability just trying to get around, and it's just extraordinary what you have to deal with.
The hand is the most complex thing that we have. There's so many different movements and mechanisms and different things like that. So to try to recreate that function with a device, or if it's altered with a splint or a cast, you realize real quick what you can and cannot
Did you
do.
ever wonder why me?
I don't think that.
I mean, you lived, but
Yeah, I lived. So that's a bonus. And looking,
and your career was over as an
my
athlete.
career was over.
Okay.
And thinking about the crash, there's a picture of looking at the ground and thinking, oh my God, I could die right now.
Right.
And not being able to get that picture out. The other stuff almost isn't as bad.
Right.
Life or death, you take life.
So you write this article for the Players Tribune, you know, what I've lost and what I've gained. We know what you lost.
Mm-hmm.
What did you gain?
New perspective. New perspective of just to enjoy life. You think back when you had the splint on your hand or any adversity that you faced, you think, oh my God, I'm not going to get over it. Or you lose a game and you think, oh my God, it's the end of the world. But here, I realize that there's so much more life. There's so much more opportunity anytime something bad happens. There's a equal reaction. So the worse it is, the better that it could be, depending on how you handle it.
Do you find yourself wanting to offer advice or counsel? Because there's so many people who, we hear every day, people are troubled. They really don't know where to go. And stories like this, whether, unfortunately, it's at the expense of your life experience, but people listen to that and go, you know what, maybe it's not so bad.
It's not. There's people that have it way worse than me, and they have a better outlook on it. I think the first thing that you honestly have to do is to deal with it, whether that is getting out of the shock phase,
right,
or going to seek the proper counsel or expressing yourself to talk about it just so you can own it. And then after that, see wherever you're trying to go from there.
I mean, I know you at this point you have to, a sense of humor isn't really what, but I'm sure people will, or maybe even little kids are like going, what's going on here? I mean, how do you try to explain to maybe someone who doesn't understand it?
I'll tell you something crazy. Old people are scared of it because they've never seen anything like it, and the young kids want it. So they're asking their parents, how can I get one of this? It's cool. And I'm saying, you don't want to get one of these. You have to earn it.
Yeah, no, you're... So the takeaway is be careful when you're out doing something.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. So what are you, other than trying to help people, what are you doing with your life now?
So a lot of what I've learned at Morgan Stanley has helped transition into other things, whether it be speaking or motivating. Right. But the big thing is just helping athletes after they finish playing. I think especially as you get into the pro ranks and you're at this high, it's
tough.
Hard to recreate that excitement, that feel, that locker room dynamic, and being able to point guys into the right thing and help them figure out what their purpose is, what their calling is after sports.
And you're with Morgan Stanley in Atlanta?
No, I'm no longer with Morgan
Stanley. Oh, you're
Stanley.
not? Okay. Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you for some stock tips if you were. So, but this is what you're pretty much dedicating your time now to, is just helping people and
specifically athletes figuring
if people,
out.
And I'm going to get this question tomorrow, so I want to ask you today, when we start getting people asking how do people reach you to get commitments from you, maybe to come to their whatever, is there a way to reach you?
So all my social media handles are at ironmassaquoi.com, and my website is muhammadmassaquoi.com.
Okay.
Pretty simple.
Good luck trying to spell that, by the way.
Yeah. It took,
We'll help you.
Yeah, I'm still learning.
Well, Muhammad, thank you very much. It's an incredibly inspiring story, and you've helped me just sitting here, because I think no matter who you are, you sit around and you go, well, why me? Why can't I have what someone else has? Why can't I do? And after this story, I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, it's not really why me. It's now you have the opportunity to go do something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's an incredibly inspirational story, and I deeply appreciate you coming by and sharing it.
Thank you for having me.
We will talk again soon.
I look forward to it.
We'll take a short break, and we're back.